Hello, welcome to the Roy Rogers News Channel. Thank you so much for watching. Alright, today for the next competitive analysis for Metagross. We're going right back on the generalist talking circuit, folks. I would like to dive into Metagross's impact here in OU, and I would like to thank Sweet Tea for You for proofreading the Metagross competitive script. And if you would like to check out Metagross in action, then I can go ahead and link the tournament coverage that Roy Rogers News has done fairly recently down in the description below. In fact, one of the reasons why Sweet Tea for You was tapped as a proofreader was due to the fact that he used Metagross so well in that tournament. So feel free to check it out. Before I dive into the big computer and give you the details about Metagross, it'd be remiss in my duties if I did not mention a brief history lesson about Metagross's competitive impact here in OU. So let's go ahead and dive into that, shall we? So back in 2015, back when Hoenn was first introduced, and back when the physical special split was introduced, Metagross had a moveset that the competitive scene has constructed for Metagross. So the moveset was Agility, Earthquake, Thunder Punch, and Meteor Mash. Later in the competitive analysis, there is an Agility set of Metagross that's not common, that Sweet Tea for You has constructed, but it doesn't really have as much impact now as it once did back in the day. So let's go ahead and dive back into that history lesson, shall we? At the time, the reason why people would use this particular Metagross is because if you were to use one Agility, then you could essentially outspeed the entire OU meta at the time. Metagross addressed some pretty common threats in OU like Jolteon, Blaziken, Aerodactyl, etc. Metagross was a real staple for 2 years in OU. The reason why I say 2 years is because in 2017, when Unova was introduced, Hydreigon and Darmanitan were introduced as well, alongside the Choice Scarf and the Choice Specs and the Focus Sash. Those 3 items caused a lot of trouble for Metagross because Metagross couldn't just OHKO anything anymore because a lot of things at the time had Focus Sash. Now, Metagross can knock out some Pokemon that don't have Focus Sash and would rather have the power over the ability to live one hit, but that's another discussion for another day. Most threats that Metagross had to deal with were either faster or Metagross couldn't OHKO. So, as a brief example, you had Darmanitan with Choice Scarf, Reckless Ability, and Flare Blitz, which was fatal against Metagross. Then you have the Choice Specs Hydreigon with Flamethrower. That was trouble for Metagross. So Metagross couldn't really find easy footing in that particular competitive meta, and if that couldn't get much worse, in 2020, when Sinnoh was introduced, you had 2 brand new threats get introduced in the competitive scene. Infernape and Garchomp. Those 2 Pokemon in OU essentially were trouble for Metagross. So the reason why Metagross was not really used that much at the time was because nobody really figured out how Metagross can be able to navigate those threats. However, it took a year to be able to figure out how Metagross can handle these threats. Why don't I use Metagross as a stealth rocker? And the Metagross has some other powerful moves as well. Zen Headbutt has a chance to flinch my opponent. So why don't I put Zen Headbutt on Metagross? Then I can also put Bullet Punch there because Metagross has a priority move and I can be able to knock out things pretty easily. Someone who is quite crafty, I don't know who, made this wonderful set for Metagross, and then this set started catching on with other people in OU, and eventually, due to the sheer amount of people using Metagross in that fashion, the Tier List Council recognized Metagross's popularity and moved it up to OU. So that is the brief competitive history of Metagross, and I hope you all enjoyed going on the journey with me and talking about Metagross's impact. Metagross still has an impact in OU, and it still has some of the problems that I mentioned before, like the Garchomp and the Darmanitan, as well as the wall problems. So you have Cofagrigus and Jellicent. But overall, Metagross can make a dent in some Pokemon, and that's really Metagross's job now. So Metagross can make a dent in a lot of the OU Pokemon, so that way your sweeper can come in and knock out everything. Now, some people would use Metagross as a sweeper. You can mold Metagross to whatever you want it to be used, but most people would use it as kind of a Pokemon to make a dent in something, and then your sweeper comes in and does the cleanup. So that's Metagross's role today, rather than Metagross's role back then. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up the big computer, and let's go ahead and take a look at Metagross's specifications right now. Alright, so Metagross's tier is OU, its typing is Steel and Psychic, its resistances are Normal, Flying, Rock, Steel, Grass, Psychic, Ice, and Dragon. And its weaknesses are Ground and Fire, and it has one immunity, Poison, unless you are holding a ring target. If this is the case, then Poison-type attacks will make contact. Alright, and let's go ahead and talk about the base stats for Metagross, shall we? So Metagross's HP is 80, its attack is 135, its defense is 130, its special attack is 95, its special defense is 90, and its speed is 70. Now before I dive into the abilities, I would like to talk about the base stats a little bit. So as you may have noticed, the attack stat is 135, which is pretty excellent. In fact, most Metagross builds are ran physically because of that monstrous attack stat. But I would like to point your attention to the special attack, because I feel like that is an underrated stat for Metagross. In fact, if you go to the Pokedex and check out Starmie's special attack is base 100. Metagross is base 95. That is only 5 base stat points shaved off. Metagross can still work with a base special attack of 95 because it has access to moves like Psychic and Hidden Power Fire and Grass Knot, and that is a set I could discuss later in the program. But that special attack Metagross can make use of. In fact, I've seen a lot of Metagrosses these days that are ran specifically as a special attacking Metagross. Although my proofreader doesn't really agree with that, my proofreader rather run it as a mixed attacker with max special attack EVs. But the fact that Metagross can be ran as a special attacker is a testament to Metagross's true skill here in the OU meta. Feel free to use Metagross however you want to use it, and I can give you some sets momentarily. In the meantime, let me go ahead and dive into the abilities, shall we? So, Clear Body prevents the Pokemon's stats from being lowered. And this is good, especially with the base 135 attack stat, because if you're competing against something like Gyarados, you can be able to use Thunder Punch and knock it out without worrying about your attack stat being lowered. Or you can use Ice Punch on that Salamence you want to knock out, since Salamence can intimidate you because you have the Clear Body ability. Metagross also has a hidden ability as well, Light Metal, which halves the Pokemon's weight. Now, I would prefer Clear Body personally because I like to keep my attack stat intact in case I want to knock out something about my Pokemon being intimidated. That is why I like Clear Body so much, because I like to keep that attack stat intact. So without further ado, let's go ahead and read the most common sets for Metagross right now. So we have the classic Rock Setter, and the IVs are HP plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack doesn't matter, special defense is plus 25, and speed is 31. The EVs are, if Impish, then 252 HP, 6 attack, and 252 defense. Or if Adamant, then 6 HP, 252 attack, and 252 speed. Its nature is either Impish, so plus defense minus special attack, or Adamant, plus attack minus special attack. Its moves are Stealth Rock, Zen Headbutt, and then for the third and fourth move, you can pick a combination of 2 of these moves. Either Bullet Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, Explosion, or Hammer Arm. Pick 2 of the moves that I have in the parentheses here, the item is a Focus Sash and its ability is Clear Body. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the item, shall we? So what the Focus Sash does is that you can take one hit and you're not going to be one hit KO'd. Metagross can use this item to its advantage, and this is one of the reasons why Metagross has been revived in OU fairly recently, because a lot of people are trying to figure out how on earth can I live a Garchomp's Earthquake or an Infernape's Overheat. Well, there's the answer for you. And Metagross can live at least one heavy blow, and Metagross can be able to dent the Pokemon right back. Now, the Focus Sash is also good if you want to guarantee your rocks, and that's why Focus Sash is good as well. Go ahead and talk about the moves, shall we? Speaking of Stealth Rock, what does Stealth Rock do? Well, Stealth Rock is a move that sets up hazards, and you can use it once and you have rocks on the field. Depending on if your opponent is weak to the rock type, your opponent's going to take a lot of chip damage if it is weak to the rock type. If it's not weak to the rock type, then it won't take much chip damage. So feel free to use Stealth Rock to dent your opponent. And it also destroys your opponent's ability to use Focus Sash, and it also destroys your opponent's Sturdy ability as well. So you can be able to knock out Pokemon in one hit, which is what Metagross is good at doing. Feel free to use Stealth Rock to dent your opponent. Let's go ahead and talk about Zen Headbutt, shall we? Zen Headbutt is a move that is a powerful Psychic type move that has a chance to flinch your opponent. Zen Headbutt is used quite commonly in most Metagross builds, although there are some people that rather have 100% accuracy and go for Psycho Cut, but Sweet Tea for You is listed Zen Headbutt because Zen Headbutt has that flinch chance. Have a flinch chance may be a little better than having a 100% accuracy move, because at least you have an extra turn to be able to do something else and knock out your opponent. Let's go and talk about some of these other moves, shall we? So Bullet Punch is a priority move that always moves first. Well, unless your opponent is faster than you and your opponent also has a priority move as well. In that case, your opponent's going to move first. And then you have Ice Punch. Ice Punch is the physical ice type move that has a small chance to freeze your opponent. You're not really using Ice Punch to freeze your opponent. You're using Ice Punch more so because your opponent is weak to the ice type. That is why you're using Ice Punch. And this is good against a lot of the dragons. It's good against Gliscor. So feel free to use Ice Punch to knock out those dragons. And that Desert Scorpion if you see it. And then you have Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch is a move that has a small chance of paralyzing your opponent. Again, you're not really using Thunder Punch as a way to paralyze your opponent. You're using Thunder Punch so that way you can knock out threats like Gyarados or Togekiss or those sorts of threats. And as well as threats like Starmie and Cloyster and other Pokemon like that. And then you have Hammer Arm. Hammer Arm, and I'm skipping Explosion for now. I can explain Explosion a little later. Hammer Arm is a move that you can use, and it's a pretty decently powerful fighting type move that always lowers down your speed every turn. But the benefit is that you can be able to dent a lot of steel types. You can be able to dent things like Blissey and Chansey for your sweeper. And that is why a lot of people like to use Hammer Arm on Metagross. That way you can be able to do that. Not to mention the fact that there is also another benefit as well. You can knock out Tyranitar, implying that Tyranitar is not carrying a Chapel Berry because Tyranitar is 4 times weak against the fighting type. So you can use the Hammer Arm to be able to dent Tyranitar. And last but certainly not least, we have Explosion. Explosion is a base 250 attacking move. And the benefit is that you can be able to knock out a lot of Pokemon. Even a lot of walls fold to Metagross's Explosion. In fact, in the OU tournament that I covered on Roy Rogers News, Metagross used Explosion in tandem with a normal type gem to knock out Milotic. So that's how powerful the Metagross is. Feel free to watch that tournament to see Metagross in action. But by golly, Metagross with Explosion is a pretty powerful move. Metagross, if there are no other options for Metagross, you can click that Explosion. Now, this does not work against Cofagrigus or Jellicent or Gengar because they're ghost types. It also doesn't work against things like Skymory as well because Skymory is a steel type and steel types are resistant against normal type moves. And it also doesn't work against Tyranitar because Tyranitar is a rock type. But you don't really need to use Explosion against Tyranitar. You could use Hammer Arm against Tyranitar. But I'm just using Tyranitar as an example. Speaking about a variant that caters to the exploding, let's go ahead and talk about Suicidal Growth, shall we? So the IVs are HP plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack doesn't matter, special defense is plus 25, and speed is 31. Its EVs are 6 HP, 252 attack, 252 speed. Its nature is either Jolly plus speed minus special attack or Adamant plus attack minus special attack. Its moves are Stealth Rock, Explosion, Bullet Punch, and Zen Headbutt. And its items are either Normal Gem or Cost Up Berry. Its ability is Clear Body. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about those two items, shall we? Cost Up Berry. Cost Up Berry, what it does is that if Metagross is at low health, then Cost Up Berry can kick in and Metagross can be able to go first. Now, the reason why people would like to use Cost Up Berry is because Metagross has a base 130 defense stat, and Metagross can take 1 or 2 physical hits. Unless that physical hit is coming from a Garchomp, and that physical hit is an Earthquake. For that certain exception, or Darmanitan's Flare Blitz, most physical attacks Metagross can take. Metagross can use that Cost Up Berry to use Explosion. So that is why a lot of people like to use Cost Up Berry on Suicidal Growth. Or you can have Metagross hold the Normal Gem, which boosts your normal moves by plus 50%. And your normal move in this set is Explosion. So just in case you need to knock out something right away, you can use Explosion in tandem with Normal Gem, and that can knock out a lot more threats, most notably Milotic, and you can knock out a lot of defensive walls, or get close to knocking out defensive walls. Uniclus is terrified of this set, and if you're into exploding Metagrosses, then this is the set that you can use. Let's go ahead and dive into the last common variant that I have listed here, the Rocky Gross. So what are the IVs for this particular variant? HP is plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack doesn't matter, special defense is plus 25, and its speed is 31. Its EVs are, if Impish, then 252 HP, 6 attack, 202 defense. Or if Adamant, then 6 HP, 252 attack, and 252 speed. Its nature is either Impish, so plus defense minus special attack, or Adamant, plus attack minus special attack. As moves are Stealth Rock, Thunder Punch, Zen Headbutt, and then for the fourth move you can either pick Ice Punch, Toxic, Explosion, or Bullet Punch. This item is a Rocky Helmet, and its ability is Clear Body. How can people like to have Metagross hold Rocky Helmet? Let's just say there are Pokemon out there that make physical contact with your Metagross. Every turn that your opponent does physical contact with your Metagross, let's just say your opponent were to use an Elemental Punch, or your opponent were to use Superpower, or a move like that, or close combat, then your opponent is going to take recoil damage every turn because the Rocky Helmet injures your opponent upon touching you. That is the benefit to using Rocky Helmet. Sweet Tea for You has added one new move to Rocky Gross. Toxic. Now what does Toxic do? Toxic is a poison type move. If you land it on your opponent, then your opponent is going to get badly poisoned. Every turn, the poison recoil is going to increase. That is something you need to take into consideration. And Metagross can win the Stall War, since Metagross is a Steel type, and Blissey can't Toxic Metagross, but Metagross can Toxic Blissey. And this only works if Blissey's the last Pokemon on the field, because if it is not the last Pokemon in the field, then Blissey can always switch out. Metagross won't be able to trap it with the Toxic if Blissey switches out, because Blissey has the natural cure ability, which cures it of its Toxic. Or let's just say Metagross were to use Toxic against something like Cofagrigus, and your opponent does not have a Cleric. Well, in that case, Toxic does work, because even though Cofagrigus knocks Metagross out, let's just say that happens, at least Cofagrigus can take home a gift, courtesy of Metagross, and every turn Cofagrigus is going to have to deal with that poison chip damage. That is going to spell disaster if Cofagrigus needs to be able to withstand a few hits to maintain its stall position. And with enough poison chip damage, it can't really handle the threats that Cofagrigus was built for, Conkeldurr. So you can be able to come in with Conkeldurr and knock out Cofagrigus with Cofagrigus' remaining health, which is not that much because the poison recoil is so bad to the point where Conkeldurr can just come in and do one move and knock out Cofagrigus. Feel free to use Rocky Gross if that is something you need. Alright, and now let's go ahead and dive into the not common variant, shall we? So we're going to dive into the Tricky Gross. And what are the IVs for Tricky Gross? HP plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack doesn't matter. Special defense is plus 25 and its speed is 31. Its EVs are 6 HP, 252 attack, 252 speed. Its nature is either Jolly, so plus speed minus special attack, or Adamant, plus attack minus special attack. And its moves are Trick, Ice Punch, Zen Headbutt, and Hammer Arm. Its item is a Choice Scarf, and its ability is Clear Body. So what does Choice Scarf do? Well, Choice Scarf is an item that your Pokemon can hold, and it boosts your speed stat by plus 50%. There is a drawback to this item. You're going to be stuck on that one move, hence the name Choice Scarf. You have to make a choice as to what move you're going to be locked on. Once you make that choice, then you can't undo the choice unless you switch out of the field. You need to know how to predict your opponent. That way you can be able to optimize that choice item to cater to the fight. That's why you need to be able to predict well when you use a Choice Scarf. Now you might be wondering, how on earth can Metagross handle something like a Mininchao? And that's a very good question. The Tricky Gross can be able to address Mininchao because Mininchao would normally do Fake Out the first turn, implying that Tricky Gross is in the lead. And then, after Mininchao does Fake Out, then you can be able to surprise it with the Zen Headbutt because you're going to be faster due to your Choice Scarf item. So that is how you can be able to maneuver against a Mininchao if need be. And then you have Trick. Trick is a move that swaps the items around. So let's just say you are fighting against a Blissey, right? You have a Choice Scarf. Now, Blissey doesn't benefit from a Choice Scarf because Blissey doesn't really need a speed boost. It needs to be able to stall things. If Metagross switches the item and now Metagross has the leftovers and Blissey has the Choice Scarf, then Blissey's essentially a dead weight to the team now because Blissey can't really do much. Blissey can't soft boil on command. It can't toxic on command. You essentially shut down Blissey. It is just as bad if Metagross tricks Chansey. The only difference is that knocking out Chansey is going to be a lot easier now because now Chansey doesn't have its Eviolite, which means that Chansey doesn't have its defense and special defense boost that it wants so bad. So that is the difference between Chansey and Blissey. So Chansey you can knock out a little easier, but Blissey you can just do a few moves and then you can be able to knock out Blissey, and Blissey's not going to really enjoy itself since it is going to be locked on that Choice Scarf. You can also use Trick against threats like Cofagrigus as well, because Cofagrigus doesn't really like Choice Scarfs either, because Cofagrigus also has a job. It is supposed to wall physical attackers, and Metagross using Trick on it is not really something that Cofagrigus would be really too happy about, and that would easily put Cofagrigus back in the grave. That pun never gets old. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into the next uncommon variant for Metagross, shall we? This is the reiteration of the 2015 Metagross, but you don't really see this too often, but Sweet Tea For You molded this set just in case you would like to use the 2015 build of Metagross for the modern OU setting. So let's go ahead and dive into the Speedy Gross, shall we? So the IVs are HP plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack doesn't matter. Special defense is plus 25 and speed is 31. Its EVs are 6 HP, 252 attack, and 252 speed. So its nature is either Jolly, so plus speed minus special attack, or Adamant, plus attack minus special attack. And its moves are Agility, Zen Headbutt, Ice Punch, and Earthquake. Its item is either a Leftovers, Life Orb, or Shuka Berry, and its ability is Clear Body. So let's go ahead and talk about the items, shall we? So Leftovers. What does Leftovers do? Well, every turn, your Pokemon, upon holding Leftovers, recovers its HP ever so slightly. Leftovers is a really good item if you want to heal. In fact, most competitive Pokemon in PvP use Leftovers. That way they can be able to live another turn. And it could mean the difference between being knocked out and not being knocked out. So that's why people like to run Leftovers, but those are more of the safe players. Then you have the players that want to take a little bit more risk, and those players would carry Life Orb. So what Life Orb does is that at the cost of some of your HP, you can be able to deal an extra 30% damage with your physical and special attacks. That is the benefit to using a Life Orb. Feel free to use Life Orb if you would like to use it. And then you have the Shuka Berry. And this is another solution that the Metagross users have in terms of walling something like a Garchomp Earthquake. Walling that particular Earthquake is quite daunting, but the Shuka Berry does help out, because what the Shuka Berry does is that it reduces the amount of damage that ground type moves would do. Feel free to hold the Shuka Berry if you'd like to take at least one Earthquake from Garchomp. So you can at least do one Agility, and then you can use Ice Punch against Garchomp. Now this implies that Garchomp is not Focus Sash, and just hope that that Garchomp is not a Focus Sash user, because if it is, your Metagross is going to be knocked out in the second turn. But hey, at least you can be able to knock out Garchomp since it has 1 HP left. Pull out something with a priority move, and you can knock out Garchomp since Garchomp has no priority moves as of the time of this taping. I talk a lot about Agility. What does Agility do? Agility boosts your speed stat by +2. And the benefit to boosting your speed stat by +2 is that it outspeeds a lot of the OU meta once you use Agility. And that's why in 2015, a lot of people use Agility so they can outspeed the entire OU meta. Agility here is really good so you can outspeed a lot of the OU meta. Agility is still an excellent move, but it's not the be-all end-all, which is why you don't see Agility used a lot on Metagross, but it's not as prominent as it once was, back when Roy Rogers News was covering tournaments in 2015. And you have Earthquake. Earthquake is a powerful physical ground type move that you can use against Jolteon. You can use it against Tyranitar if you can predict Tyranitar coming in on the switch, Infernape and Darmanitan if you can predict them coming on the switch since they are faster than you, and you can use it against fellow Metagross if you can also predict that coming in on the switch, and same for X-Drill. So feel free to use Earthquake to be able to address the Pokemon that I mentioned here. You can also use it to damage Volcarona neutrally. The benefit to using Earthquake against Volcarona is that you won't be able to activate Volcarona's Flare Body, meaning that Metagross won't be burned if it uses Earthquake against Volcarona. And then for our last not common variant for Metagross, we have the Hippo Killer. Now, hence the name, it is used to check Hippowdon with Grass Knot. And what are the IVs for this particular Metagross? And by the way, this is the special attack Metagross I was discussing at the beginning of the program. IVs are HP plus 25, attack is 31, defense is plus 25, special attack is 31, special defense is plus 25, and speed is 31. Its EVs are 252 HP, 6 defense, and 252 special attack. Its nature is quiet, so plus special attack minus speed. Its moves are Grass Knot, Hidden Power Fire, Psychic, and for the fourth move, either Hammer Arm, Ice Punch, or Meteor Mash. Its item is an Expert Belt, and its ability is Clear Body. And before I dive a little bit into Grass Knot, let's go ahead and talk about the Expert Belt, shall we? So what does the Expert Belt do? The Expert Belt increases your Pokemon's damage output if the move being used against your opponent is super effective. The Expert Belt gives a bump in move power if you predict right in terms of a move being super effective or not. That's why this particular Metagross has an Expert Belt. Let's go ahead and dive into the physical move, shall we? So for the physical move, you can either pick Hammer Arm, and I mentioned this earlier in the program, is good against things like Blissey, Chansey, Tyranitar, etc. Or you can use Ice Punch, which is good against the Dragons and Gliscor. Or Meteor Mash, which is an excellent stab option. Same type attack bonus. Even if it's not super effective, it's still going to make a heavy dent against your opponent, since that is a stab move, and it has a small chance to increase your attack stats, so that's a nice plus. In 2015, Metagross originally had Meteor Mash as one of its moves, but the reason why these days Metagross opts out of using Meteor Mash is because Meteor Mash has a small chance to miss, and also there are a lot more moves Metagross has access to that are significantly better in terms of coverage. So that is why people tend to opt out of using Meteor Mash, but it is still used, and I've still seen it in PvP. In a tournament setting, you don't really see it too often because of the reasons that I mentioned. And now let's go ahead and talk about the special attacks. Psychic. Now what does Psychic do? Well, Psychic is a powerful special attack that has a chance to lower down your opponent's special defense stat. I would like to mention this now, since I didn't mention this before. Psychic and Zen Headbutt address the fighting type Pokemons, your Minichows, your Conkeldurs, etc. The reason why Psychic is good against threats like Conkeldurr is because Conkeldurr has a decent defense stat, but not really a good special defense stat. The Metagross can be able to attack Conkeldurr through its weak special defense. And you have Hidden Power Fire. Hidden Power is a decently powerful special attacking move, and you can mold it to whatever type you want. You just need 40 type specific gems in order to change the typing of the move. And for more information on that, you can go ahead and watch the FAQ video episode 4, where I discussed that with Petrosky. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to tell you the item that you need. You need a charcoal, and you also need a mysterious gem, and you need to convert them into fire type gems. And all you need is 40 in order to change Metagross's Hidden Power to Hidden Power Fire. And Metagross's Hidden Power Fire is good against Scizor and Ferrothorn. Although Ferrothorn, you might need a few more hits because Ferrothorn has a decent special defense. And last but certainly not least, Grass Knot. Now what does Grass Knot do? Grass Knot is affected by the weight of your opponent. Hippo is a pretty heavy target. It weighs 661.4 pounds. Imagine Grass Knot, max special attack, quiet nature, so plus special attack, and an expert belt. And the fact that Hippowdon is heavy. All I have to say is my condolences to any Hippowdon that deals with this particular variant of Metagross. Now before I close out the computer, I would like to talk about one extra detail that you may have noticed in these slides. Sweet for You understands the fact that genderless breeding is kind of expensive. So if you may have noticed, the IVs are not 5x31. The IVs are HP plus 25, defenses plus 25. You might have noticed that even with defensive builds of Metagross. The reason for that is that way you can be able to afford breeding a competitive Metagross. You can be able to, if you can afford it, a 5x31 defensive Metagross would be ideal, but Sweet Tea for You understands that genderless breeding is kind of expensive, especially genderless breeding of Beldum, which is why Sweet Tea for You was a little bit more forgiving in the IVs. I just wanted to put that note there. Now I can close out the computer. And before I sign out of the program, even though this does not apply for Metagross, I would like to show you the breeding tool by BlueNose. And you can use it in this way. You can type in Metagross. And since Metagross is a genderless breed, you won't have any egg moves pop up. So Metagross is right there. Feel free to use this particular tool for other Pokemon that are not genderless. Let's go ahead and sign off with the program here. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Roy Rogers News Channel. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to the channel, like the content that you see here. And this is the Roy Rogers News Channel signing off. And thank you to the viewer who has suggested the Metagross competitive analysis. I had the script for quite a bit of some time, but I appreciate your feedback in Monkey D. Matthews' interview, and I am happy to say that Metagross has been covered on the Roy Rogers News Channel. Fast, accurate, unbiased, Roy Rogers News. Oh, and I hope you like the timestamps that you see in the video.